Today's class is entitled Rantings of an Aish Rabbi. I will be your host. Let's begin. So, there is a very important, there's a book called the Mesilas Yesharim, The Path of the Just, written by quite a wise fellow by the name of Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. His acronym would be the Ramchal. Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto lived, anyone know when? 17 is correct. 1724. He was alive in 1724. He lived from 1707 to 1746 in Padua, Italy. For those unfamiliar and did not do the math, that means he died at the age of 39 years old as well. He was born in Padua. And the Ramchal of Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, he, I don't know who knows this and how they know and if they know, but it is said that the Ramchal was a Gilgul, a reincarnated soul of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest sages that ever lived, that got the stempel from none other than Moses himself. Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest, started studying Torah at the age of 40 years old. So 39 years of his life, he missed out on. So, they say that the Ramchal of Moshe Chaim Luzzatto was the reincarnated soul that lived out those 39 years, finished the job, and then died. The Ramchal starts one of his most well-known books, The Path of the Just. After the introduction, the first thing he starts by saying, Yesoda Chasidus v'shoresh ha'avoda sheyizbarer v'yisametz eitzel ha'adam ma chovaso ba'olamo. The reason I know that by heart is because a friend of mine made a song of it, and I was singing it in my head as I was reading it now. The Yesoda Chasidus, it means the foundation, the root of saintliness. The Shoresh HaAvoda, which again, the foundation and the root of service, lies in one's coming to clarity and truth. What is his obligation in his world? Everybody got that? Now, I was speaking with somebody recently. And we got into a conversation about Judaism. I know that's shocking. But one of the parts that we got into was, I said to him, so what do you believe about after we die? Like, what happens then? It's like, I didn't really think much about that. I'm going to totally butcher this. If someone knows it, help me out a little. Alice is walking along the road and she sees the cat. I don't know what I'm talking about. Alice in the Wonderland. And she goes to the cat and she comes to a fork in the road. She goes, which way should I go? And he's like, well, where do you want to go? She's like, well, I don't know. He goes, well, then it doesn't really matter which way you go. If you don't know where you want to go, then it doesn't matter where you go because you don't know where you're going anyway. So what does it make a difference? Go any direction you want. Because there's no end game anyway. So this guy was telling me that, he's Jewish and he became observant. And we were discussing different ideas, and it clearly wasn't that he was fully observant. And I said to him, so what happens when we die? He said, I didn't really think that much about that. I don't want to go too strong, but I will in you. I don't want to go too strong, but I said to him, essentially what I was trying to get across to him is, if you don't know what happens in the next world, how do you know what to do in this world? Anybody get that, what I just said? In other words, if you know there's no next world, so great. So that's going to affect what you're going to do in this world, right? To the idea of Torah and or any sort of things don't really matter. You understand? Because what does it matter? And everyone's going to say, what do you mean? There's reward and punishment. Well, you say, but there's no next world. We say, well, it's in this world. Well, clearly we see that's not the case, because if it was, we wouldn't have the questions of what do bad things happen to good people, what do good things happen to bad people. So clearly it's not clear in this world. There must be something else going on. Matter of fact, I heard of Yaakov Weinberg word it like this, that the Rambam, Maimonides, he has his 13 principles of faith. And if you look at the 13 principles of faith, you'll see that they break down to 3 different categories. What are the categories they break down to? They break down to category, in no particular order, but I guess in order. That is, they break down to, I don't want to put it in Jewish terms yet. I want to make it general. To what we call a higher power, or powers, if I, just to make you feel good. Number 2 would be a book of rules or laws or instructions, let's put it that way. And the last of them break down into what we call reward and punishment, right? Or we can call it cause and effect, right? That would be valid as well, cause and effect, or consequence, etc. Okay, this is the idea of number 3. Does everybody see that, interestingly, this is not just Judaism, but every single religion, you're not a religion until you have these things. And I mean ultimately, I don't mean like, for example, government is this, right? Government is higher power, they have rules, and they have reward and punishment. But the problem with government, don't get me started, but one of the problems with government is that they can't necessarily enforce it, right? In which case, they can enforce it as much as they find out about it. If they don't find out about it, they don't enforce it. In which case, if you're able to get out of it, then there's no reward and punishment. Everybody see? In which case, it's not the real deal. But every religion will tell you that there's a higher power, powers, there's instructions, and there's reward and punishment. And you know what? It's logical. It doesn't make sense otherwise. If you'd be missing one of them, then it wouldn't matter. None of them would matter. For example, let's say you don't have a higher power, but you only have instructions. What are the instructions? Who gave you the instructions? So if man gave you them, so that's your option. You want to follow it, you don't, if you don't do it. Get it? That you have to have something like that. Instructions, reward, and punishment. What if you have a higher power and you have reward and punishment, but you don't have instructions? What are you getting rewarded for? What are you getting punished for? If you have higher power, if you have instructions, but you don't have reward and punishment, then what? Then why am I'm not going to do it. I'll give you a clear example of that. Imagine you have a kid, and you go to that kid, and you say to him, "Kid, you better listen to me, because if you don't, nothing will happen." Do you understand? Nothing. And if you do the right thing, nothing as well. It's a big motivator. Yeah, what do you got?
We don't need instructions, though. We can always find instructions within ourselves, like Avram did.
What do you mean we don't need instructions?
The instructions are within all of us.
Well, by Avram Avinu, there was no reward and punishment either.
Well, reward and punishment existed within the construct of the world. It wasn't to make.
Not within the idea of Judaism in any way, sense, or form, and not in the idea of, well, you know what, I take that back. We did have something. The Sheva Mitzvahs were there. Sheva Mitzvah Bnei Noach are essentially the Torah. So we had 7 mitzvahs. We just have 613. And Avram Avinu, right, that's the big question, like how could it be? He did certain things, all the avos, etc. Even though I think Avram's the only one that the Gemara says, if I'm not mistaken. I've heard said, and I maybe have seen Midrashim quoted, but the Gemara I know says in 28, B, I think it's 28b and 82a in Yuma, no, in Kiddushin, and 28 in Yuma, that Avram Avinu kept the whole Torah. The Gemara says specifically Avram kept it. But one of the questions when he didn't, okay, it was before Matan Torah, he didn't have to, etc. Yes, Sheva Mitzvos you got to do, right? So we still had the idea of what? We did have instructions.
It just seems like instructions would be less important than the other two.
Well, I mean, if you don't have any instructions, then you can't have reward and punishment.
We could intuit the instructions from what feels right and what feels wrong. I mean, to a certain extent.
Okay, that was a good addendum, right? To a certain extent, kind of causes a lot of problems, and that's why the world is as it is, right? Because people decide ISIS has also set up some rules and instructions, yeah, that they see fit, right? And that doesn't fit with anyone, really, right? So the idea of what we find is that these are pretty pivotal things. You want to call it less important? I'm okay with that, but it's certainly crucial. And if we're lacking one of these things, then we kind of have nothing here. So all the people that say like, oh, there's no reward and punishment, like there's no olam haba, there's no proof, nowhere in the Torah does it say anything about olam haba. It doesn't say anything about olam haba in the Torah. First of all, it does. Because we're stuck in the idea of Torah meaning written Torah and not oral Torah. Oral Torah is just as much Torah as the written Torah, if not possibly more. But the idea is, nonetheless, we certainly have the idea. But even then, the idea is what? Olam haba? Yeah, there's no such thing as olam haba. That makes no sense. Then what's the point of all the things? Why have rules? Why have God? This is not going to happen. Okay, so now we understand these ideas are pretty crucial. Now, wouldn't it make sense to figure out what's going to be? What's going to be? What will be? Not this the Jewish thing like, what's going to be? But what's going to be? What's going to be afterwards when we die? And I asked this guy, I never really thought about that much, not really that important. Look, what does that mean? Why would you follow any Torah, any mitzvahs? What is the point of all of it? Now, remember, we've had this discussion when we were sitting there, well, because it's good for me, etc. But that's only if there's one part of it. If not, then forget about it. There's nothing there. Okay, that's the concept. The altruism of a person able to get such a level. But if not, then what's going on? So people, how many of us actually worked it out and thought it through and got clarity on the matter that there is no God? It's clear, right? Now, this is where Pascal comes in awesomely. And loosely, not to get stuck too much in it, but Pascal's wager essentially says, yeah, it's worth it to be a Christian even if it's not true. Now, I want to adapt it and I want to explain it to you in terms of Judaism. It's worth it to be a Jew even if it's not true. Not just a Jew, it's worth it to be an observant Jew, even if Judaism is wrong. What I mean by that is that even if it turns out it's wrong, or certainly, even if you just think that it's wrong, it's still worth it. Why? Let's see. What do we miss out by being a Jew? I had a study partner, a chavrusa of mine, who had this, he shared this idea with me. His name is of Noach Pellet, and he's living down in Florida. He gave me this, I remember talking about this is probably 2003, so whatever many years ago that was. We were talking about this conversation, and he had this conversation with one of his relatives. And he said the following: let's say that we die and there's nothing. How would you feel?
You wouldn't feel.
Good, you wouldn't feel, right? Now, but let's say you would die and there would be nothing. How do you feel about that right now? So let's see. What's that? Oh, okay. In other words, because like it was all for nothing, so to speak, right? So I mean in terms of how would you feel that if a person lived a religious lifestyle? How would they feel if it turns out that really there's nothing? What would they feel they missed out on? I think it falls into three different categories. What are the three things that we miss out on or that is so bad? And don't tell me charity, right? It was charity. People give charity, right? There's nothing to do with like Judaism per se or not. People like to give charity even though they're not Jews, right? Give me something specific that we're missing out on.
Bacon.
Okay, bacon, right? Right? If I may, let's call it food. Is that right? Yeah. Food. Okay, give me another one.
Work.
I'm sorry? Work. How are you missing out on work?
I only work 6 days out of the week.
Work. Let me ask you something. I know it's uncommon in America for people to work 6 days a week because they usually only work 5 or 4. But the idea is, are you getting where I'm going with this? That's not exclusive to Judaism. There are plenty of non-Jews, most of them don't. Okay, but my point is, what I'm saying is that, what do you mean by work? You mean like in terms of getting a job or not getting a job or involved in things? Most people in the world don't work 7 days a week. Most people in the world don't do that. Okay, so I don't want to not make you feel good, so I'll put it up there for you, but I'm going to put it in between there. Right? Okay, so it goes like this, yeah? There's something more that's bothersome. In other words, if I said to you, be religious, you go, no, I can't because of work. Why? What do you mean because of work? There are plenty, no, you cannot become wealthy.
Yeah, but come right after the Holocaust.
Good. Excellent, I hear that. But right now.
So this doesn't apply 50 years ago.
That's right, I would give a different class then. Yeah? In another language. Yeah. Welcome to America. So what's that? What's one of the biggest ones? But you're close. Shabbos, right? Shabbos, let's include in that Yom Tov, all right? I forgot Shabo. Let's talk about some of the holidays, right? These are things, like what I mean by that is now we can throw in work. In other words, it's something which I can't, one day a week, I can't do anything, right? It's like you ask a religious person, Shabbos is, fill in the blank. Shabbos is a day of, don't say rest, because that's not right, but what do they say? Shabbos is a day of, no. No. Don't do that and don't do that. You could do that, but not that, because if you do that, you might build a raft. And you're not allowed to build rafts on Shabbos, right? You're like, what? Build a raft? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah? Idea is what? But Shabbos, you can't do this, can't do that, can't do this, right? I mean, it's like crazy. If you think about it, if you grew up with it, you're used to it, but if you it's just like, you splitting your peas and carrots? You cannot separate your peas and carrots on Shabbos. What? Dude, I'm not driving a car. Like, I don't care. No. Okay, so Shabbos. Okay, and number 3, I like how everyone here is being so, what's that? No, stop it. Hold on one second before we get to prayer. Everyone here is being so clean. That's like the best word I could use. Like, come on. What are you missing out on? The fact you got to be religious. What?
Adulterous relationship.
Oh, there you go. That would be what we call AR. Okay. Adulterous relationship. Is there something you want to speak about?
No.
Okay, so moving along. So there we have is adultery. In other words, that's a one particular thing, but just messing around, right? Like, what else are you missing out on? Tefillin, you have to put on tefillin. Oh my gosh, you serious? You have to wear black straps for 12 seconds? Come on, that's not the deal breaker for people. You go to someone like, you got to be religious. I'll keep it all. I just can't put that box in my arm. You know what I'm saying? Forget it. I won't do it. I won't do it. I won't do it. Come on, people, right? No, but I can hear food being a deal breaker. I can't eat red lobster anymore, or green lobster, or blue, or any lobster. I can't Shabbat, I can start every single week. I mean, once a month, maybe once every 6 months. I'm like, and what? I can't be R all the time? I can't be R? Okay. Is there another one that I'm missing? And I don't want to make you feel bad about it. If there's something you think else is the deal breaker, work is not really a problem. Most people can work with Judaism. Well, give me an idea, unless it's working in an adulterous relationship, right? What do you got?
Yeah, we can't murder and steal.
I hear that because all the nations, that's what they're into, and it's part of their life plan, right? You get it? Okay. Now let's break this down and let's see what these things are. Let's see what they are. Now this is gonna, no. Let's break it down. Food. You mean to tell me that I have to live a life of self-control? I don't want that. Why would I want to live a life of self-control? That is messed up. I'd rather live a life that I give in to every one of my desires, and anything I eat, I see. I noticed I messed it up in the beginning, so I kept going. Everything I see, I eat. Right? We all know that seafood diet, what you see is what you eat. Idea is one understanding. That's what it comes down to. Food. What is the concept of food? By the way, interestingly, food is the first mitzvah in the Torah. What I mean by that is it's not actually the first mitzvah, but it's the first discussion God has with Avram. It's like, it's not true either. With Adam, he says to him, but I guess I could have had you all. So he says, what? He says, Abraham. He says, my name is Adam. And then he says, sorry about that. It was the first time a parent messed up a kid's name, right? He goes, what? He goes and he says, Adam. He says, what? He goes, don't eat from that thing. What? What is food? It's the central theme of our lives. When you have people come to visit you, you sit down. Imagine you didn't have food to get put out. That would just be awkward. You just sit and look at each other. But if there's food, now I can go ahead and I can eat these nuts or whatever it is. Yeah, I want to tell you something. There was this woman, an elderly woman that used to come to church all the time. And one day she didn't show up to church, and the pastor, the reverend, the father, all three of them decided to come visit her, see what's going on. So after about 2-3 days, if we're not coming, she goes to visit her at the house. They get to the house, and she answers the door, and he's like, "Oh, Father, thank you so much for visiting. Elderly woman, thank you so much for visiting. No one visited me. I'm so happy that you came." The phone rings. He goes, "Oh, I'll be right back. Just make yourself comfortable. Go sit down." So he sits down. This is this bowl of peanuts. Where was she? She had a root canal, so she wasn't. That's why she was in pain. She wasn't able to come. And he sits down, and there's a thing of peanuts. So, he makes himself at home. He starts eating the peanuts. Before he knows it, he finished the whole thing. She walks in, and she sees him, and he looks a little uncomfortable, and goes, "Reverend, Father, what's wrong?" "I feel terrible. I ate all your peanuts. I didn't mean to. Maybe a couple. I ate all of them." She goes, "Oh, it's okay. Ever since the root canal, I can't really chew them. I just suck the chocolate off. It's okay. Enjoy them." Anyway, the idea is that food is a central, integral part. That's gross. Food is an essential part of our existence. Okay, the idea is what? But what it's telling us? Therefore, self-control. What did I miss out by eating kosher? Most of the time, I missed out on eating things that were nasty, right? You ever go to the Olympics in China, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? The idea is, you ever saw those pictures? No one saw the pictures? Was that in the Olympics? They were selling in the streets, right? Food for people who wanted to buy, like rats on a stick and scorpions with chocolate-covered scorpions. Delicious. What are you missing out? Roasted dog. What are you missing exactly? You're missing the idea of what? Not much. You actually learned self-control. Okay. How about the idea of Shabbos? You mean to tell me? Yeah, what do you got?
Self-control wouldn't be necessary then, is that religion?
Say again.
Self-control is only necessary, because of religion or because of society. But that's what we're talking about.
Why does self-control, is it necessary to be involved with religion?
Why is everyone so obsessed with self-control?
Say again, please.
Why is everyone so obsessed with self-control?
I don't know who everyone is, and I don't know who obsesses. But I can tell you the following. I think it's intuitive, if I may borrow a word that you used. I think it's an intuitive thing that a person who goes ahead and has self-control is a person who lives a better life. Would you disagree with such a thing?
Not completely.
So somewhat you would agree.
Yeah, somewhat.
Okay.
I think that everything comes in moderation.
So in that somewhat of moderation is what I'm referencing. And the idea is, and in that somewhat moderation, what I'm referencing. Regardless of Judaism and Torah, a person who just wants to live a life, which is a better life. You're a happier person. When you are someone who controls things, when you come to the idea of like, I did it, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of that I don't have to be doing what everyone else is telling me, or even what myself is telling me, I can be in control. That's to do with religion. Rav Dessler, when Rav Dessler was already a little bit older, he used to smoke. He smoked cigarettes, right? And a lot of people smoked back in the day, and they smoke today also. But it's just shifted from cigarettes to other things. But the idea is that back in the day, when they used to go, he quit smoking at an old age. I don't know what it was. I'll make it up. He was 114. And, but really, I think he was 70 or something like that, right? And he quit smoking. Why did he quit smoking? Nothing to do with health. Maybe also, but the main reason he quit is because he felt that it was in control of him and he wasn't in control of it. And he didn't want it to be that something else is controlling him. Therefore, he worked on himself. That's the idea of self-control. Nothing to do per se with religion. Well, yeah, say again?
I agree with that part.
Good.
I want to find someone's control of you.
That's right. And that's a similar idea in terms of food. Would you agree that possibly, are you from America?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you have seen someone that is fat before.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea is that what's food? It's the ultimate level of no self-control. You understand? It's no person goes, would you like me to supersize? The thing is already supersized. The thing is ridiculous. Yeah? The portions that they have are just not normal. If anyone saw that movie, read that book, Supersize Me, right? Then you'll see, I mean, it's sick what the portions used to be like and what they are today. It's just not normal. Self-control. What'd you lose out when you died? You went through a life where you lived a life of you were in control and you were the one running it, not something else running it. I don't think that's such a big loss.
That answers all three of them.
Okay, that's true to an extent, but I want to build a little more because I still have time. Okay, so number 2 is the idea of Shabbos. Yeah, what do you got?
You missed out on experiences, though.
Correct.
And so if you die and you find out that religion doesn't actually exist and God isn't real,
Mm-hmm.
then you haven't had all those experiences. And you could tell yourself that while you're alive.
Well, again, you're very focused on the idea of religion. I didn't realize you're so observant. I want to share the idea. Put aside anything to do with God. Not enough of God. It's wonderful. But I mean to say, just look at it from secular. Just look at it from that. A priest will go his whole life, this can get illegal, so let's not talk about that, but without being involved in any relationship, celibate. You say, well, he's missing out. Do they feel like they're missing out? The answer is, I don't know. I haven't spoken to them. But the ones that I did speak to, I was on a plane. I was in Italy. And I'm coming back from Italy. And I sat, this is like at the beginning of a joke, right? So a priest and a rabbi were on a plane. And this guy sits next to me who's a priest. And he spoke Italian. And I speak English. And I was like, okay. And he starts talking to me. Now, I found this in many countries, but it was something in particular about Italy that they don't care if you speak their language or not. They're going to talk to you in Italian. Right? And I'm like, hi. They're like, arrivederci. I'm like, arrivederci. What's that?
Spanish are like that as well.
Yeah, it's true. In Costa Rica, I was visiting Costa Rica, and this guy comes over to me. I did not speak a word of Spanish when I went there, and I'm walking, not a word, nothing. I think I knew hola. See, I don't know a word. And I come, and the guy's like, hi, hola. I'm like, hola. He goes, brrrr. I was like, I don't have any money, right? And he's like, brrrr. I was like, dude, I don't know what you're saying. And we had this whole game where we, did these things. And then we walked towards his car. I'm going to get back to my Italy story in a second. And we walked towards his car. And as we walked towards his car, for some reason I ended up on the driver's side and he ended up on the passenger side. You're not from Costa Rica, are you?
No.
Have you been there before?
No.
Has anyone been there before? No. Yeah, what's their slogan? What's their motto?
I don't know. Is there 3 months?
You were there 3 months. You don't know the amount they say every. Nah. Pura vida. Pura vida. That's what they say all the time. Pure life. That's basically their slogan. Pura vida. And all day they're saying these ideas. I was actually, let me just tell you the story. When I was in Costa Rica, we were going up the mountain to a volcano. It's called Volcano Poas. And when we're going up there, there's this little hut up there where somebody's selling merchandise. And I walk in, he goes, Shalom. I was like, whoa, you speak Hebrew? He goes, no, I want you to buy things. I was like, well, that was blunt, Anyway, I get to, now let's backtrack to the second story they interrupted. And we end the driver's side, and I said to the guy, I'm like, oh, can I drive? And he's like, brrr. I said, yes. He said, brrr. I said, no. I don't know. He said to me, but we kind of emotional, like, do you have a license? I'm like, of course. Like, do you drive manual, stick? I'm like, of course I drive stick. I'm from New York. We don't drive stick in New York, right? So, but okay, I had learned once, like 10 years earlier, to do it twice. And he's like, okay, and the cab driver in Costa Rica let me drive his car for 40 minutes, right, to my destination, right? You don't find that in New York. You get into the driver's seat, they kill you, right? But the idea is that, let's backtrack now to the first one, Italy, and they just talk to you. And this priest is just talking to me. Like the whole flight, he's just talking to me. And I'm like, dude, I don't speak Italian. Our common language was Spanish that we both didn't speak. Right? So this is what we were having. But what I gathered from the conversation clearly is that he was happy that he wasn't involved in a physical relationship. I made that up because I don't know what he was saying. But the idea is that we find is that it's not uncommon to meet, and I have met priests that will say it, whether they're telling the truth or not, I can't tell you. I can only tell you what they've told me, that they don't feel like they're missing out at all. This is something which, even though they go, now, I'm going to touche myself in this one. That's because why? Because they feel that this is worth it because of religion, right? But there are others that could say it's worth it just for the sake of self-control. There are people that live like Buddhists and people go, and I'm not even talking within religion. I'm talking within just the concept of the world. People will say it is more worth it for me to have control than it is to have this, quote unquote, whatever the pleasure will be. I don't feel like I'm lacking. Now, if you're from America, so then it would make a lot of sense when you feel where you're lacking because that's how we are trained. We are trained to think we are lacking. That is the reality of it. It used to be, they live their life like a candle in the wind. But there's another thing it used to be. That I heard this from Rabbi Shlomo Farhi from England. He's actually from Deal, New Jersey, but now he lives in England. He's actually now in Israel. And Taz grew up, he wasn't there yesterday. And Shlomo Farhi said, interesting statement, he said that necessity is the mother of invention. Have you heard that phrase before? Necessity is the mother of invention, meaning when you need something, so that forces one to now go and invent, right? So if you didn't need it, then you less invent it. But in our day and age, it's switched. Invention is the mother of necessity. When something comes out, I need it. Something comes out, I need it. I need it immediately. So we've been trained to think that we're missing out. But the reality is, one who wasn't, we'll call it educated in that manner, and one who can maybe detox in that manner can come to an understanding that it is worth it not to experience something in order to have this pleasure of self-control. And you know what? I want to give it to you. Let's even say you're right. Let's even say we are missing out. I'm not saying we're not missing out at all. I'm not throwing that out there. Yeah, you miss out in the experience of the food. You miss out in the fact of Shabbos that you couldn't do something you wanted to do. You miss out in the relationship that you could have been in. Let's say you are missing out. But the payoff is greater than the loss. That's what I'm trying to point out. And if you disagree, great. So then disagree and go with whatever you want, yeah? But you better make sure that you're right. And that's when we're going to get to the flip. Number 2 is Shabbos. You mean to tell me one day a week I have to stop? You mean one day a week I actually have to shut everything off and possibly think? I saw an article not long ago. Someone sent it out in a mass email. I wish I remember the real thing, so I'm going to mess it up again. But as somewhere along the lines of somebody saying they decided in their family that one day a week that they're not going to be involved with technology and with all this kind of stuff. They're just going to spend time with family, can be together, eat good food, and say l'chadodi. No, I'm just kidding. And whatever. And they said if only people would do this, it would just make your life so much better. And I thought that really is a brilliant idea. We should probably do that. Oh wait, we do, right? Every week. And we've been doing it for thousands of years. It's called Shabbos. A person who's ever done this before, has anyone here ever forgot their cell phone at their house? Yeah, you forget your cell phone. Say again? So you're already a higher level, my friend. Right? I don't mean that, yeah? I mean someone who did it by accident. Anyone ever forgot their cell phone by accident? And your initial reaction is like, oh no, but you're already on the train going the other way. You're like, no. You're up against the window, no, right? You want to get your cell phone back. The idea is what? The idea is that you forget it. In the beginning, you feel upset. But how does it feel as the day goes on? How does it feel?
Free.
Free. Give me more. How does it feel? I'll survive. Give me more. Better. Disconnected from ridiculousness. Right now, we have these knee-jerk reactions, though. Every so often you'll do this, you'll be like, oh, it's at home, right? And then all of a sudden you won't even know why you'll do this. You'll be like, right, and you have your phantom rings and whatnots. But the idea is that you feel great. You feel great. You understand? I just want one day a week where we stop. And there's nothing. You die and there's nothing. But during your life, you're able to have a day off where you chill. Okay? And what about this one? What about number 3? You mean to tell me I have to have a relationship with only one person? And it has to be, or even if, okay, let's say with only one person, and it has to be that it's that I'm involved and focusing only on them, and I can't be with multiple people? I mean, why? Why would I want that? Why would I want a deep relationship with one individual? I would rather a superficial, shallow relationship with multiple. Now you say, a lot of people get offended by this and say, what, you think that's the way the secular world is? And I say, yes. Okay, anyway, the idea is like, yeah, unfortunately that's what happens, right? The mentality is say, yeah, get married or whatever it is, but it's accepted to beforehand, yeah, have fun and just do whatever, just, kind of practice now and mess up any sort of, feelings or real connection with anyone so that when you actually get married that you say the wrong name. But the idea is, understand that what are these things? Are we missing out? Yes, I'll give it to you, you're missing out. You're missing out on the fact that you can't have lobster on Shabbos while driving with Debbie. She's from Dallas. Right? So you can't do these things. So everybody get these? Yeah, you're missing. But what are you gaining? That's if there is nothing after this world. What if there is something, though? Not only did I gain self-control and thinking it's right there for something, not only did I have a time to be able to reflect, not only did I have a real relationship, but I'm going to heaven. It's going to be amazing. And you, my friend, who didn't follow it, and there's nothing, so you had no self-control, you had no time to work it out and think, doesn't mean you couldn't, but the reality of the world is that's what happens, and you had a relationship with multiple people multiple times of the day. Then you died and you had nothing. So you had nothing here and you had nothing there. Oh, you had something, yeah, you enjoyed it, it was fun. But ultimately, what did you have? You had nothing. And if it's true, not only did you have nothing, but you're on a highway to... So the idea is... Say again.
Still go to heaven.
Will he?
Yeah.
Will he? Explain. I must be missing something in this religion.
Don't Jews not believe in hell?
Yeah. Jews don't,
Jews absolutely believe in hell. The question is what you mean by hell.
it's not eternal.
When did I say eternal?
So if it's not eternal, then where do you go afterwards?
Okay. Let's say it's not eternal. Let's say that's true. All the Gemara says, depending on certain things people do, it might be eternal. Let's say it's not eternal. So what happens after that? So what do you get? Well, you're dead. There's not much to work on.
You get reincarnated.
Either you come back to this life again and have to go through nothing again, or if there's some chance you get into the next, to get into heaven, we'll call it. What level of heaven are you on? I didn't know that. Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So there's in other words, if you've done more or less in your life, it's the same thing of amount of pleasure. They're both infinite pleasure.
Qualitatively different, but they're both infinite.
How does that make sense, sir?
We can't understand it because we don't think in terms of infinite.
So then the word was irrelevant and just let's use the word qualitative.
Yeah.
So what kind of pleasure is it?
I have no idea.
Very low level quality. That's like a person, I love when people say, well, what's the big deal? I go to heaven, I get to heaven, I got there. So what does it matter if I'm on a higher level, a lower level, if I'm getting more qualitatively or I'm getting less? What does it make a difference? I made it. Isn't that enough? That's like a person saying, let's be honest, baloney. You make it to heaven and you could have been here. You could have had 70 You could have been, sorry, wrong religion, I apologize, wrong religion. You could have been here, you could have been a contender, you could have been, and you're over here. What do I care? I'm in heaven, so what do I care? Really, what do you care? That's like, let me give you a little analogy what that's like. That's like everyone in this room driving a Ferrari, a Porsche, or a Lamborghini, and you're driving a 92 Camry. Okay, I'm relaxed. I'm sorry if you have that car. But the idea is, what do I care? I'm getting to A to B. I'm getting A to B. Baloney. You feel stupid because you could have got the most incredible things. You could have been on the highest of the high, but you decided to be lower. Yo, what's up, baby?
I'm confused though, because weren't you in the beginning talking about how there's really no punishment in Judaism? Sounds like hell is a punishment.
Why? Why did I say there's no punishment in Judaism?
I don't remember.
I was setting up there absolutely is. There's a higher power, there's instructions, and there's reward and punishment. Now, again, we can call it, what's it? Cause and effect. Well, not cause and effect, but like effect. I don't know if it'd be cause, but let's call it cause and effect. Idea of effect. Absolutely, my friend. What is your name?
Brett.
Brett.
Yes.
Nice. There's no E at the end, is there?
No.
Hello, Brett. Brett! Now we have the idea is what? There's a higher power, we call him God. There's instructions called the Torah. There's reward and punishment, that's heaven and hell. Now, I don't know what you mean when you say there's no hell. You must be referencing the idea of eternal, right, everlasting hell. That's the idea that possibly that we don't say for the most part. But the idea is absolutely there is, purgatory. There is a level of tremendous pain that a person will go through because of the fact of the things that they've done.
But aren't you supposed to just be a good person over everything else?
Sure.
Like,
Yes.
eating lobster the same thing as an Orthodox Jew talking gossip about someone,
Well,
or judging someone?
Yeah, well, you're, in other words,
Technically, we're all going to hell if we're not perfect. You know what I mean?
right. So therefore we should go to which level, my friend? You realize what you just said? Well, I'm going to prison anyway for a year. I might as well go for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
You're listening to what you're saying, my friend. I'm already going to prison. It's only a white-collar crime where I'll be in a room with a bed and like a nice little loft of whatnot. So I might as well go to maximum security where if I drop anything in the floor. I understand, like, what are you talking about? There's a major difference. Even if a person, let's say, I happen to disagree with you. Not everyone has to go to hell. But let's say what you're saying is true. Why would you want to go to a more painful experience? Why would you want to make it more difficult? That's like saying a person is going to get sick in their life. We might as well get AIDS. Right? Do you understand what I just said?
Yeah.
I might as well get, no, of course not. If you get a cold, that doesn't mean you should now get AIDS. Like, what is that? I already have a cold, I'm going to get Ebola. Right?
That's not what I meant. I meant that all these things are described. I think that no matter how religious or non-religious you are, I think that a good person prevails over lobster and everything else that's being explained. You know what I mean?
My response to your statement is, of course it's good enough to be a good person. Just my question is, what is the definition of a good person?
Right. Is it someone who's very religious or someone who's very kind and giving and sharing and loving, you know?
Right, so which one?
I think the second.
Okay, and you're welcome to think that. And that is wonderful. Are there any people in the world that think differently?
Yeah.
Who's right?
You never know.
Interesting. Stick around, Brett.
Okay.
Stick around. Make sure you don't go anywhere. Okay? Now, I would suggest that maybe we can know. I would suggest we can know. I wouldn't even say maybe. I would say maybe. You know what? I would say we could know. Yeah? And that we'd have to explore and take a look and see how maybe we could know. But is it good enough to be a good person? Absolutely. The only question is, what's the definition?
I think to piggyback what Brett said.
Piggyback it.
It's becoming my favorite here. Anyway.
That's nice.
You know, it's relevant to the individual. You know, let's say I grew
What's-
up on bacon.
Did you say it's relative to the individual?
Yeah,
Go
I grew
on.
up on bacon. For me, just to give up bacon is a big deal.
100%.
But for you, it might be something else. So it is important to be a good person. And to strive for that and to work on all those three things. I can't maybe try to be perfect with food, but boy, it's really hard for me.
Now, did you find anywhere that we said that it's not hard? It certainly is hard.
Self-control is really.
It absolutely is difficult. Is it worth it?
I'm still wondering because Judaism does not talk about life after death.
Which part of Judaism doesn't talk about life or death?
I've been
Because the one I know absolutely talks about it.
The one I know has been Stephanie Sarasser. We are emphasizing this world, not the next.
That might be true, our emphasis, but that's very different than saying doesn't talk about.
Okay, well, I don't know.
Was
about
this
that.
Judaism that you're referencing reformed in any way?
No, this is from Baltimore.
We're going to have that little word Baltimore then. Because although you are
He's
correct,
famous Rebbitzin.
oh my goodness, she's going down. Now, she's going up. The idea of what we find is like this. We'd have to, unfortunately. But the idea is it is correct. And that's why, one of the answers why it is stated that in the written Torah, we do not have a mention of the world to come. I believe this is what you're saying, is because our focus is on this world. That is correct. But that doesn't mean it's our goal. In other words, when you're in a certain situation, so you got to focus on that which you're dealing with right now. But the goal is the world to come. In which case, if you get too caught up in this world, then we miss the point of the goal. So I'm not sure what you mean. I think I do understand, but we could talk more about it. But ultimately, understanding it goes like this. Yes, it is very good to be a good person. And the question is, what is the definition? In Judaism, we state that the definition does not mean just being a nice person. Although you're right, I do find people come and say, well, what's better? What's better? Okay? I know a guy who's religious, and he is a jerk, okay? He is a jerk. He keeps Shabbos, but he's a jerk. That's scenario one. I know someone else who's not religious, they don't keep Shabbos, and they're so pleasant. Which one is worse? My response is, they are both bad. It is, and they are both good. It is wonderful that this person is being a nice person, but unfortunately, they're missing out on another major part of the equation. It is wonderful that this person is keeping Shabbos, but unfortunately, they're missing out on a major part of the equation. So when we say you have to be a good person, not a half person, a whole person. And that's where we have to take a look and start delving a bit deeper to understand where that comes from. So in summation, people, just as the beginning and introduction to this topic, that is, doesn't it make sense to figure out what the end game is before we get started? Or should we become like Alice and just take any road, because who knows anyway, I don't know where I'm headed. At the end of the day, if there is something, it might be worth it to be heading in that direction. If there is nothing, so then do whatever you'd like. Until next time, it's been a pleasure. See you when I see you. If I don't, then I won't. Take care and have a wonderful day.